Let's go ahead and import our model to Maya. Now we are inside Maya 2022. First, we need to set our project to the directory that we want to save our scene files inside. Since it's a new project folder, we need to create a default workstation. Now, let's import our model. I always hide the unnecessary items in Outline. It just makes it easier to find the object you're working with. I'm also increasing the focal length of a perspective camera. When you import a model from ZBrush to Maya, the surface of the model would look rough, like as you can see here. To fix this, just go to Mesh Display menu and click on Soften Edge. Now, it's looking way better. Before going any further, let's save this scene. Okay, let's go ahead and import the eyes. You can find the FBX file for the eyes in the video description. Let's place the left eye in the eye socket. For the right one, I'm just duplicating the same object as an instance. And I'm mirroring it around this x-axis. We can add our objects to separate layers and lock those layers. So while working with the hair, we don't accidentally select them. Okay, now let's switch back to ZBrush and paint the hair density map first. You can paint your maps inside Maya too, but I prefer ZBrush because it just feels more intuitive and it's also easier to use the references. I'm just filling the object with black color, and to make it easier to see the model, we can increase color as ambient in the material menu. Let's also enable posable symmetry. Now, we're going to paint those areas that we want to have hair on with color white. Just remember that we don't want the hairline to be too sharp to make the nice transition, soft transition. Okay, now let's export the map. Just like we exported the albedo map from the multimedia exporter. In Maya, this map can also be very useful to see exactly where you want to add those hair guides and where you want to select the base due of the hair. First, we are going to select the faces that are going to be the base geometry for the man hair. It's the first step that you can take before adding a new XGen description. After that, click on create a new XGen description from the XGen toolbar. Okay, now in this window, choose a name for both the collection and your description. Basically, collection is just a parent folder for your XGen descriptions. Now make sure that you select control the primitive by placing and shaping guides, since we're using guides to form the head. Now, let's put the layers to reference mode so we don't select them while working with the guides. We just lock them from the viewport. Now, from the toolbar, grab this tool called Add and Move Guides. You can add new guides to the surface within the area that we have selected as the base geometry. Now let's go ahead and add our first guide. You can use the scale tool to change its length. Now, there is this tool that we're going to be using a lot in this video. It's called Sculpt Guides. We use it to change the form and the direction of the guides. The reason why we use guides is that instead of controlling all the hair individually, we can group them into different sections and form each group using a guide. I'm just trying to copy the overall shape of the hair from all the references that I have collected. You can also copy one guy's shape to another to make things a little faster, so you don't need to shape them one by one. You can just right click, copy guide shape, and right click to the next one and paste. Now, click on the preview icon. Let's take a look at the results so far. Okay. So obviously there are a few things that we need to change. First one is the width or hair thickness. Here I'm using a basic random expression between these two numbers, 0.0075 and 0.01. It could change based on the scale of your model. Also, let's change the density to 100. Okay. For density mask, we are going to use the map that we painted earlier in ZBrush. First, from this drop-down menu, click on Create Map, choose a name for your map, change the resolution to 10, and just click on Create. Now, we don't need to paint any map. We have our map painted already. Now, if you open up Hypershade in the Textures tab, you can see there is a new file node created. Right-click and select Graph Network. Now, all we need to do is change the image source to the map that we exported from ZBrush. Now, click on the Save icon next to the density map to update the hair. Now you can see the hairline changes. Another thing that we need to change is the Modifier CV. So it's basically the number of segments that each hair strand could have. Don't change it too high because it could make the processing heavy for a computer. You might run out of resources. Now, next step, which is very important, is adding modifiers to the hair. Okay, let's go to the modifiers tab. First modifier we're adding is clumping. You can see that the hair looks very flat and doesn't look realistic. Now, what clumping does is that it breaks the volume of the hair into different groups. For clumping maps, I'm using the hair guides as clumping guides as well. It's only for the first clumping modifier. We're going to add more clumping modifiers, but for the first one, I'm using the hair guides as the clumping guides as well. Now, there are a lot of settings here. There are a lot of values, different numbers. Best way to learn what each one of these settings do is just try different values until you find the right numbers. With this curve, we can control the clump scale throughout the hair length. So the lower the scale, the higher the tension in each group will be. I'm just adding new point to. I'm not decreasing it too much. I don't want it to look too tense. I'm also using a random expression for the intensity, just like what we used for the thickness. Now, I duplicate this modifier to make another clumping. For this one, we're just changing the point density. So, unlike the first clumping modifier that was based on hair guides, this time we are using a fixed density. And compared to the first one, it's usually a higher density. Now, the next modifier we are adding is cut. It's very simple. Cut, just gives a unique length to each hair strand, since in reality, no two hair strands have the same length. Just assigns a unique length to each one. Just keep it low. We don't want too much randomness. Now here, there is this script that I use for most of my projects. It's a simple script, might look complicated, but it's very simple. It just generates random values across the surface. You don't need to know coding, you can just copy what I'm writing here. So basically, there's this noise pattern, and there's a slider that you can use to change the contrast of that noise pattern. Very useful. The next modifier is noise. Noise modifier is just, as the name suggests, it adds noise to the hair. That's it. And these are the numbers I came up with after many different tries. I usually use 3 noise modifiers, and each one has a unique frequency and magnitude. Again, to learn what each one of these values, each one of these settings does, you have to be patient, you have to practice, you have to try different numbers, see what each one of these modifiers does. You can also add coil. Coil could be useful for certain hairstyles, but just a tiny amounts could just be a kind of a unique noise pattern. Let's go back to what we were doing and add more guides to shape the hair. Now remember, each time you add new hair guides, and you want to see the result, you have to update your clumping map as well. Okay, there is not much explanation here. I'm just adding as many guides as necessary to have that shape of the hair as close as I can to the reference. Don't add too many guides though, because if you add too many guides, it just makes managing the hair, and if you want to make changes to the hair, it just makes it very difficult. So what that reasonable number of guides is just something that you gotta learn with practice. You have to keep working on different hairstyles, working on as many characters to finally learn that how many guides is too many. We have a hair part here, and you can see hair from these two sides are interfere because some of them are trapped between these two guides that are into opposite directions. So they just don't know, should I follow this guide? Should I follow this guide? So to make it easier for them, we are going to introduce a region map. Region map is very useful, and what it does is it assigns a color to different areas, so hair planted on each area won't be influenced by the guides on the other side. So if you have a guide on the blue side and you have a guide on the red side, so hairs on the blue side won't follow the guide on the red side. It could be blue, red, any color. But we don't need the entire surface to be affected by the region map. Only this area. That's why we are painting another map for region mask. So we are telling Maya that we want the region map to just influence this area. Okay, now it looks much cleaner, but there is still some hair jumping around because we are using clumping modifiers. And we need to use the same maps for our clumping modifiers. So how to fix this? Just need to assign the same maps as control maps for our clumping modifiers as well. Now, looking much better. To have a smoother transition around the hairline, these areas that hair stops, we just need to assign a new map to hair width or thickness. That was just the main hair. We are one down, but we still have the eyebrows, the eyelashes, the beard, So for the facial hair, we just need to repeat the same process, select the faces, select the base geometry, and um, add a new description, add new guides, assign maps, add modifiers. It's just the same. There are some differences, like the eyebrows has a different thickness. The beard usually, not usually, always has higher thickness, and eyelashes, the eyebrows, each one of them have their own features and characteristics, but the technical process is exactly the same. We're just using a reference and we are trying to copy what we see in the reference. That's all. Okay, just a little explanation here. We can assign the same maps we already have to the new descriptions. We don't need to keep adding new file nodes to Hypershade. We just can use the same one that we use for the main hair and add it to the new ones. So to do that, we need to enable geometry inside Hypershade. Just right click and in the show submenu, click on geometry. Now this way you can see what attributes each node is connected to. And here we can connect a map to multiple descriptions. If you have used nodes before, it's not a new concept. Some of you might have used nodes in different softwares. Most 3D softwares nowadays use nodes, so I'm sure some of you are already familiar. And that covers my process for using Xgen. In the next one, I'll show you how I use Arnold engine to make a photorealistic skin shader, how I light my character, and we're going to be exploring different render settings, and we're going to be using a new hardware that I have received and I am very excited for. I'm going to test it for the first time, so see you soon.